Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 30. I am super excited to say that number because we are 30 weeks in. That's unbelievable to me. As I said in number one, didn't know if it was going to be one of one or one of many. And so far, it's been a pretty cool experience. So we are filming for New Year's Day today, and we are actually filming this on December 29th, and we start every show the same. So let me start it up the same. Basically, the premise of Run It Back is we take teams that have previously played and we run it back, so to speak. And we talk about what worked in the matchup, what didn't work, what our strategy for preparation was, what we would do different in hindsight now. And today specifically, we're talking about Westminster versus Baldwin Wallace. This game took place November 19th in 2019. So it's a year ago now. And we're doing it from Westminster's perspective. And just before I introduce our guest, I'm just going to give a special shout out to the Rising Coaches Network, of course, because as I've said throughout most of this show, throughout all the episodes, really appreciate what they're doing for the game of basketball and coaches being able to network with each other and learn from each other. I think it's been a tremendous experience for their membership. So really appreciate all that they do. Our guest today is a coach with Westminster's team. Doug Caputo, I'd go so far as saying is a very good friend at this point. I spent a lot of time, going through stuff in our Tuesday calls that have migrated to different days, et cetera. But we shoot the breeze on a lot of basketball, and he's someone whose opinion I've really come to value. Doug is in his second season with Westminster. This would be going into your third now. And as a player and as a coach has had some tremendous experience. He played 4 years at John Carroll where they won the OAC championship and made the NCAA tournament for the D3 level. He went on to play pro for the Akron Aviators, started his coaching career at Cardinal Mooney as a high school assistant. He's been a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers Academy for 2 years, going into his third year. And of course, like I said, is now with Westminster as an assistant and GA. So Doug, I'm super happy to have you here today, man. Welcome. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm actually, I always hear about these, I watch the reruns and whatnot, but it's just it's an honor to be able to be on one.
That's awesome. Love having you here. So let's talk a little bit about specifics. I usually like to begin with preparation. So this is going back a while now. Obviously, this game happened in November of 2019.
Yeah.
Tell us, you are on a 3-day turnaround. You had played in a tournament just previous to that, and this is the first game of your regular season, if I'm not mistaken. When do you start the scout? What does that process look like? How do you prepare for Baldwin Wallace? What are you guys doing?
So actually going into this game, Baldwin Wallace or BW, I specifically, like you mentioned, I played at John Carroll. So I played in their conference. So I was very accustomed to their, everything that they would do. And then I don't know you probably saw, but BW was 22 in the nation when we played them. And then they were also in preseason voted top 10 in the nation. So they're they're a very skilled team, and they're one of those teams you always got to respect going into the game. So preparation wise and scouting wise, what we really did was, just watching a lot of film. For me specifically, I've watched and played against them multiple years, same coach all 4 years that I was in their conference. So it was one of those things where, I was very familiar, like I said, very familiar of what they were going to do. And they're actually, I could be botching these numbers, but I know they were in top 25 for this as well. But effectiveness and just the effectiveness of using the pick and roll. So, they would do their basic, I know a lot of colleges do it, but the 5-man setting a screen up top, 4-man down in the dirt or in the paint. I call it the dirt. But and then as soon as the 5 sets a screen off with the point guard, the 4 would then pop up and the 5 would roll, just kind of interchanging spots. So they were very effective. Like I said, top 25 in the nation with using that offense. So it's been very good for them, and they've been keeping it ever since. But anyway, going into it, I would say we didn't have too much time to really look at things because we typically play for D3 Wednesdays and Saturdays. So, we had, I want to say 3 days because even though it was a tournament, we still had to, next week going right into the next game. So we had about 3 days to go over things, watch film. And that's the biggest thing we do is just watching a lot of film. I specifically, and the downside to D3 is we have 4 coaches, 2 are part-time. So they also have other obligations, they have other jobs, and it's kind of,
right.
They can't always be there for everything. But me as well as our head coach are the 2 that kind of have to predominantly do most of the work. So for us too, we just kind of sit down, watch a lot of film, go back and forth on what we have to do for it. And I don't want to spoil too much because I know you'll probably get into the dynamics and everything, but I'd say roughly just 3-4 days in advance, just watching film and going over things in practice.
So what does that really look like then? How many games out are you watching? What specifically are you watching for? Obviously, you've already mentioned that particular stats jump out off the page for this opponent. How are you implementing that scout to your guys? You mentioned to me sort of when we previously talked, you don't do so much on paper. So what does the on-court look like? How are you walking through? Are you guys focusing on blobs, slobs, actions, focusing on what you do? What does that week look like for you going into that game?
So, yeah, and I'll just say it for everybody else. Our head coach here is very firm on not using hard copy paper. Now, a lot of people may disagree with that, and a lot of people agree with it. Yeah, it is what it is, but he's very firm with, if you make a scouting report, the kids are just going to get it and probably toss it aside. You're going to see scouting reports laying all over the locker room. And has it happened before? Yes, it has. But so what we typically do is we like to make film session every single day. So say, this game was on a Wednesday and, we would be practicing on a Monday. So I guess we really only had 2 to 3 days to turn around for this. But so Monday, what we're typically doing is we'll go in, we'll watch 30 to 45 minutes of film. We like to keep our film rather short. And when I say short, I mean 30 usually is the short end version, or 45 is kind of a longer version for us. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times kids don't have the attention span to sit there for 45 minutes and watch film, and so we like to keep film roughly 30 to 45 minutes, breaking down basically all of their plays. And we do go over baseline out of bounds. I would say roughly about 2 to 3 of their baseline out of bounds plays.
Right.
Majority that we went over for this game specifically was their personnel. So their personnel is a huge thing because BW Baldwin Wallace is very, very good at 3-point shooting. That's their niche. And that's one thing that you really have to make sure that you take into consideration when you're going out there with them. If you hedge too hard, maybe somebody else be open, blah, 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 or they get to the big. He's very good at passing. So anyway, going into it, we really look at, I'd say the main focus for this was personnel. The second focus in our film is going over their plays. And then finally, the third thing I'd say is, like I mentioned, we look over a little bit of out of bounds plays. So Monday, break it down for you real quick. Monday, typically 35, like I said, 30 to 45 minutes of film. Once we're done with that film, we'll go into practice, get some shots up, get our guys loose, first half hour or so. Then about an hour or 45 minutes into practice, kind of for the last hour or so, what we would typically do is, do a shell, and a defensive shell, and then having our offense come down running their offense. And then our shell would be, working on our defense around their offense. So we'd be doing about, I'd say, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day of, depending on how confident you are and how hard the stuff is, of just kind of going with the shell defense and working with their offense.
Gesundheit, somebody, whoever that was. So when you're talking about the film sessions and the walkthroughs and the importance of the personnel, obviously it's earlier in season. It brings 2 questions to mind there. First, does the way that your scouting gets delivered change as the season goes on? Like, are you focusing on different things as the season goes along? And then the second half of my question is, are you delivering that like one set of film to all of your players, or are you giving, say, like your starters, their individual matchups type deal? I love it. Their specific matchups, or are you giving everybody everything, so to speak?
So our film, we all watch together. So, I mean, we don't necessarily send out individuals to each one. But I mean, what we will do in film sessions is, call people out or say like, hey, this is your issue and things like that. So we don't necessarily send like individual film to each person. Because again, being at a smaller school, I mean, we don't have all the people and everything to be able to do that. I mean, we do, but that would just take a lot more efforts and a lot more time. But for us, I'd say what we specifically look for, and sorry, I kind of forget the first half of your question.
Sorry, the first half was probably not attributed to what you're answering right now. The first half of the question was the way that it's delivered. Does it change throughout the season? In that this is a pretty early game, so there's fewer games that you can watch. Usually earlier in the season, I guess the focus is a lot more on like things that we do and trying to do them well. You did mention that you played against this team and you had a good idea of what they were doing. You probably go back and maybe even watch some stuff from a previous season or whatever. But in the way that you deliver it to your guys, does that change throughout the season? Or is it always one group session, 30 to 45 minutes? This is the kind of thing we're looking at. Or like, how does that work throughout the season? But where you were right now was the second half of the question, right?
Yeah, that was the second half. Now it can and has changed and has altered throughout the season. Specifically in the beginning, especially we only play this team once a year. So, right. I mean, that's why you kind of have to focus more on this. Now the teams, once you get the conference play and things like that, and I feel a lot of people could probably say the same, once you get accustomed to what people are running, you kind of, I don't want to say stop going over as much, but once you start to get comfortable with their system, you don't have to necessarily watch as much film on it. It's more, and we kind of harp more on putting it in action, because a lot of times people learn more by doing it rather than watching it. So, I mean, we could sit there in the film room and say, hey, you're doing this and you're doing this. But then as soon as you get on the floor, they're like, oh, well, like what? And I guess what I'm saying is it's easier to correct them on the floor and do it in a shelf version of, like I was mentioning before,
right?
Rather than sit there and watch it on film. Now we do, I mean, speaking of, going back to our conference play talk, once we're in conference play and we play a team once and we know what they're going to do the second time and they're not going to change anything, because there's one team in our conference who runs the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's a flex. So, I mean, it's not like you really have much, believe it or not. Yeah, they run a flex, but it's not like they're going to be changing a lot. So you don't have to necessarily watch film. We just watch more on, personnel or things of that sort. We don't specifically spend too much time in the film room for them. But when like teams like this, yes, we would definitely sit more in the film room, and it does alter throughout the season.
Awesome. So let's get into one thing that I think is important and fairly specific: ball screen coverages. I noticed you played a lot of drop in this game. There's some going over, there's some going under. Are you guys more of a one size fits all team, or do you alter that for different opponents, different matchups? And like, how are you teaching, implementing with your guys from day one into day, I don't know, 150 in the season, whatever we go to in the 4 months, 5 months type deal? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so last year we had a lot of tough guys tough long guys that can get through screens very well. Now, that being said, last year we tried to start the season out, and the reason we did change it multiple times throughout this game, because our coach is very firm on, at one point kept saying, you have to get through screens, fight through everything. We are not switching anything. And he was very firm on that, and it was hard to change his mind, trust me, because right. I knew our guards would be able to stick up with their guards. So it was very hard, but it altered a couple times. And now half the times you're probably mentioning that you saw guys going under the screens was just them being lazy and going under the screens and not going over.
Interesting.
But ideally in the game, and like I mentioned, our coach is firm. He always go over screens and do not switch. And he mainly said that because in the first, I want to say 2 games of the season, we kept switching. And as we were switching, you would notice that once they switched, they would get a little lazy. And then the guy would just blow right past the person who was supposed to be switching. And so he started kind of getting a little more upset with all of that and saying, okay, you're strictly fighting through everything. And sometimes that came back to bite us, in the behind a little bit, but other times, it definitely helped us out. Now for this game specifically, I thought, and the reason I picked this game was, one, we haven't had any games this season for a D3 program. We are still having a season starting in January, but we haven't had any yet. So that's why I wanted to go back here. But this game specifically, I thought we did defensively. Obviously we had some breaks here and there, but I thought we did really well overall. We do alter things, but last year we were and this year we're going to be a lot more loose with it. Switch screens, we have a lot more athleticism on our guards, but typically last year we were just straight fight through everything.
Interesting. And was your big always back? You always played in the drop there, or?
Yeah, because once you show film to everybody, you'll know why. He's a 6'6", like 240, 250, just straight muscle. He's a big boy, and as soon as he gets caught out at that 3-point line, it's over with. He wasn't the best at hard hedging. He wasn't a slow kid, but he wasn't the quickest kid where as soon as he hard hedges and they beat him, it's over with. He's downhill. And it's kind of that's another reason why we wanted to just keep him down there, because he's a force.
I'll get into it in the film a little bit, but are you guys trying to play pick and roll with two, or are you trying to involve help? I'm just curious about that. What's sort of your game plan for that?
So that game specifically, we had, and I'll give you a little bit of our personnel very briefly. We had the player of the year last year. We had a second kid who was also, he could have been the player of the year easily, but he was first team.
Was the player of the year Isaac? That's who you're talking about?
No, actually, it was Dylan O'Hara.
Really?
Isaac,
interesting.
Yeah. And I have the stat sheet pulled up too, so I don't know if you want to see that at all. But yeah, Dylan O'Hara was our player of the year last year. He only had 11 points in that game. Isaac Stamatiadis, that's who you're talking about.
He had a decent game. That being said, it's just Isaac's numbers. Isaac had 21 and 17 in this game. He had a massive game, right? So.
And Isaac's a junior. He's going to be a senior for us this year. He's like I said, he was first team last year, and he could easily be player of the year this year. So we have great people coming back. But going back onto it, we a lot of times wanted Isaac going downhill, because once you start seeing him going downhill, his confidence is through the roof. Once that kid's able to put his head down, and he's a great ball handler. He's a 6'4", 6'5", 4-man. He's got muscle. He's thick. He's really athletic, and he's the type of kid who he never was really, you could tell he was never fully taught at a young age, because he's sometimes a little slow to the game around him, but he's just so athletic and such a good, going downhill, but he doesn't necessarily see the full floor. When he's dribbling, he'll put his head down and he'll just attack, which isn't a bad thing. Well, I guess it could always be better, but with him, as soon as he's going downhill, like I'm saying, it's a tough thing to stop. He's like a freight train. So we did try to get him going downhill. We tried to get our point guard going downhill a couple of times just to open up our 3-point shooters in the corners. But then a lot of time for this game as well, we just wanted to get the ball down low. So, you'll see we had so many weapons last year that it was like we didn't necessarily have one thing we have to do. We had, well, if this fails, well, at least we have the player, we had this kid who's the player of the year. Well, if the player of the year isn't doing so hot, then we have this kid who could easily be in that spot too. So we had a couple weapons to use, which was nice.
Nice. Excuse me. It's funny. My mind is wandering a little bit, and I'm wondering, just as a bigger guy yourself, do you like to coach the bigs a little bit more? And do you like it when they succeed a little bit more? Do you like?
I love it.
The traditional big obviously is dying a little bit. So, do you love it still? You guys throw it in still?
Oh yeah. So I'm 6'8", but I was always a guard. Well, I shouldn't say a guard. I was always a 4 guard. I was always more of a stretch. I was more of a pull-up guy. So working with bigs and centers, I always knew how to post up, and I always did, but it wasn't my strong suit. Just because I didn't have the weight on me. That was it. Right. But then you get a kid who, like I was mentioning, he's a 6'6", 240, 250, and he's benching almost 350, 400 pounds. Just rep it. Oh, he's a big boy. Yeah. He's a big boy. But you're working with a kid like that in D3, not many people are going to be able to stop him. So as long as and his footwork was not as good as it could have been. And then by the end of the season, you just start noticing he started doing up and unders. He started doing up and unders, reverse layups, things he never thought he could do. And then it's funny because actually in this game was one of them. He did a nice move and he looks over and just starts smiling at me in the mid game.
There you go.
And it's just one of those things. You're like, yep, okay, he's learning.
So moving from, yeah, for sure it is. I'm secretly a big at heart. I just never grew into it, right? So,
right.
So specific to this game, going from the general prep to this game, what did you really identify as being your advantages? What did you identify as the weak spots that you wanted to attack on their team? Players, actions, et cetera, whatever. What were you specifically looking at in terms of what you were going to attack from your scout?
Yep. So as kind of just going back to what I just mentioned, Blake, who was the 6'6", 6'5", big boy down low, we always know he is a threat. Anybody, we even played a Division I team last year and he held us in the game for majority of it. And then they had to start doubling him at one point and it was an issue. So going back to the game, we knew the size difference he was going up against. He outweighed the kid by easily like 50, 60, 70 pounds, easily. And so we knew get the ball to him and let him go. Now in that game, he only had 8 points, but rebound, he was nine rebounds, 8 points. So he wasn't really like, wow, those are crazy numbers, but it just with him, we knew he would be a force down there, even just getting positioning, times he can tap the ball out, get it to people. But again, what our main focus was getting Isaac Stamatiadis and Dylan O'Hara. So Isaac, like mentioning, he was the kid who could have been the player of the year. And then Dylan, he was the player of the year. So just getting them to the ball. And Dylan can really do anything. He could shoot, he could attack, he could pull up. He was a good passer. He was just a great overall player. And then Isaac was more of like a standstill jumper, or he could play back to the basket, but he's more going downhill is his best thing. So that's why you'll see there's probably, I don't know if you got the clips in there, but there's some plays where we ran a point guard little handoff at the top, and then that would get number 22, Isaac, that would get him going right downhill. That was one of our big things. Like I said, just to get him downhill, because as soon as somebody helps from the corner, we always had our shooter in that same side corner. As soon as that guy helped in to try and stop him, you had that dish off right there for the three. Or if that three wasn't there, the big guy's going to have to help, and you got the dish off to the big guy right there. Well, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, I appreciate you, because my next question was actually going to be, are there specific actions that you go to for these players? But there you go.
I jumped on it. So yeah, that was our main offensive idea, was to just get him going downhill. We knew that if we started to struggle a little bit, we can get the ball down low and kind of work it in. We had a couple people that could play down there. And actually this game, we one of our bench players was, and I'm not sure if you had the numbers in front of you, he was number 20. He had 20 points. Now that was his first, and I want to say he went about 20 points for 2 games in the season. And he was one of our bench players. He was one of the guys who would go in, maybe get you 15 to 20 minutes a game. Athletic kid. He's a high jumper here as well. So, he can get up, and he's about 6'4". But this game right here was just one of those games. He went in, we put him in off the bench early, and he didn't come out again. Because it was just one of those, and I'm sure many coaches in here, you have that one player who goes in and just starts going off. You're like, okay, all right, just ride the wave, let him go. And we didn't pull him out, and we didn't necessarily plan on it, but that's just sometimes how the ball rolls.
Yeah, it's always nice when you get those bonus ones. I'll come back to this in a second. I'm going to ask you if you guys do depth charts and how many you play, what your philosophies are on all that. But the quick question, just sort of relating to the preparation and everything before I ask that, is now that, it's later, and obviously you won this game, but having played it, having sat through it, were there any things that you look back on in hindsight that it's like, we missed this in the scout, I would play this differently, I didn't like that matchup, or any key adjustments that the other side made that really stood out?
Now, I got to say, the reason I picked this game was because it was such an overall good game for us. But I would say, there was, honestly, and if you're looking at BW scoring, their number one player, Luke Schaefer, he had 15 points. Now that kid's typically going out, and he shot 7 for 17 and 1 from 5 from 3. So, I mean, we sent focus on him. We said, you have to stop this kid. You have to. So honestly, I mean, yeah, there's a couple little things. I would say overall, no. I'd say I thought we played it and executed very well.
Right.
But I thought there was maybe we should have switched more. I mean, I'm one of those who, if your guards can guard their guards, and then let them switch, because it's not, you're going to sometimes get caught going downhill. But I mean, overall, like you said, we won it by 10. I wouldn't say there's anything too huge that we should change.
Like it. In game, what are you looking at stat wise? Like, what's important to you guys? And I often like to ask the question, like at the half in this game, you're up 1. What are you specifically looking at, say, like on the box score there? So, I mean, what are you guys keeping track of on the sideline? And when you go to the half, what jumps off the page, and how do you implement change at the half?
So I focus on, and I'd say the first thing I look at is there's 3 things: rebounds, turnovers, and free throws are my 3. And the reason I say those 3 is because rebounds, if you're getting out rebounded by 10 to 15, you could probably guess that you're getting beat pretty well, I would say. Now, it could be defensive rebounds, but still, if you're getting out rebounded big, I'd say that's a big issue. If you're shooting 0 for 10 from the free throw line, or bad numbers, and the other team's shooting good, that's another deficit right there. Okay, that could easily be why you're down. Now, again, we were up by 1, and then turnovers are just the obvious one. If you're out there with 3 turnovers and you're up by 1, well, like, okay, well, we have to keep this up, but we're probably going to have a couple turnovers in the second half, because 3 turnovers is very good in one half. But I'd say those are my top, or not even mine, but I'd say the top 3 that our coaching staff looks for is rebounds, turnovers, and free throws.
Awesome. So then how do you implement change? Are you just yelling and screaming at your guys? Are you running different plays? Are you telling them to be more aggressive? What does change look like in the locker room for you guys, say at the half, or in the huddle for you guys?
Yeah. So change on the offensive, defensive, anything specific, or are you just talking in general?
Well, like, let's say of the big 3 that you mentioned, like in this game, you actually crushed them in the rebounding battle. I think you out-rebounded them by 18 or whatever. But let's say you're not getting the amount of rebounds that you should be. You're being out-rebounded at the half. Or you're either not shooting the ball well from the free throw line, or you're not getting to the free throw line enough. What specifically are you doing to implement change in those areas as being the key areas that you're looking at?
Well, so, and actually, I just saw Byron. I just saw the question he asked, and it's kind of going to go. It's going to play into this question, so it's perfect. That he asked
let me read that first. Then, Coach Byron Taylor, he says, Coach Caputo, you mentioned your big guy that can score inside. Once you find a play that he scores on, do you just keep running that play, or do you just put it in your pocket and go back to it later during the game?
So, and that's actually exactly what I was just going to say. So what we do, especially at half for this game, we started noticing, and like I mentioned, we started noticing with Isaac going downhill off of that little handoff up top. We started noticing that. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. Just let him keep going downhill until they find a way to stop it. Now, once they stop it once, okay, now we're going to have to try and throw in a little alter to it, or throw something different. Now, you don't want to keep running the same thing 10 times in a row, but,
right.
maybe 2-3 times until they start to look for, and then maybe get away from it and then come back to it later on, and that's the way I look at it. Is once you get something and they're having trouble stopping it and they're not calling the timeout, they're not going to be changing anything on the fly like that, so it's hard. So I'd say just keep running it, and then get away from it after a couple times and then come back to it. But yeah, so typically in this game specifically, what we were looking to change at halftime was, like I said, get Isaac, keep giving him the ball, keep going downhill. And then we wanted to start utilizing, like I mentioned, Clay, the kid coming off the bench who really, really showed up for us and got 20 points on the bench. I'm pretty sure we didn't start him the second half, but we brought him in bright and early, pretty close, right, just to get him in and like if he's making a difference. And we were even contemplating at halftime, he's making a difference right now. Should we start him the second half? And because he was always one of those 6 men for us. But we didn't end up doing it because, why go away? Let him come off the bench and do his thing again. And then when we talk about change in the huddle, typically it's our head coach doing most of the changes. We didn't, like I said, he was very firm defensively on fighting through everything. So we really didn't have much to change on the defensive end. And they weren't really lighting us up from 3. I mean, what were they? They were 9 for 31
They
total
shot
shooting,
29% for the game. I noticed that, and I thought it was intriguing. Like, I'd be okay with 29% with a team that shoots the ball pretty well overall for the season.
And that's all they do. Yeah.
So I kind of remember my question from before. I glossed over it because I temporarily forgot it. But just going back, do you guys utilize depth charts? How are you managing rotations? How much is predetermined versus how much is feel? What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so depth charts, you talking on our end or their end?
Both, actually. I'm very curious
Okay.
to hear what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so depth charts on our end, we played, I want to say 12 guys that game. Yeah, 12 guys that game. And they played about 8. So, 12 to 8, and the nice thing about it is we even contemplated doing and this is going to probably make some people go like, what? We contemplated doing a 5 in, 5 out last year.
Right.
Because I ran it when I was in school. It was very successful. And if you have the depth for it, and get everybody in the rotation, it doesn't hurt. Now,
I'll interrupt you real quick. So Mike, who's in the call right now, coaches in my conference, and he's at George Brown, who won our conference last year, and they rolled 5s, and they had 15 guys that could play. So it was tough.
If you have the numbers
to scout them, right? Like, they just had a troop of guys.
Yeah, if you have the numbers, it doesn't hurt because especially as soon as you got 5 going for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, then those guys are huffing and puffing. Then you send that second group in, you got 5 fresh bodies going right at these guys as they're tired, and as long as you're conditioned and in shape, and that is the one thing that we harp on our guys, and we are huge on that here, is the weight room, but not only the weight room, conditioning.
Right.
We condition the crap, and we do conditioning drills in the weight room. We do conditioning drills out of the weight room and off the court on the track sometimes, or we'll even do it in the gym. Everything is about conditioning and keeping our guys in shape, excuse me, making sure that we can just run people off the floor, because especially this year, we're looking to trap a lot and stuff. But yeah, so depth charts, I kind of got carried away there.
No, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I interrupted you.
No, we're good. Depth charts, we do, like I said, we don't have typed up scouting reports, so nothing visual, but depth charts, we do show, a couple clips of their best player, and then a couple clips of their second best player, third best, fourth best, fifth best. So you see like the starting 5, and then you also see the 2-3 guys off the bench. So you see about 8 guys. Now, mostly a lot of schools in D3 especially, or just college in general, I'd say, have played 12 people. Not a lot of people can do that. So you don't have to worry about as many people. So it's harder to scout us. But it's something that we take into our advantage, is just having the numbers.
Interesting. So what is your philosophy on number of players that you would play typically? Are you guys usually going to play 12, or is that something that was specific to this game, this matchup type deal? And if you are normally going to play something like 12, how do you balance those minutes? Like, is that rotation happening in you and your coach's mind, or do you pre-plan stuff going in?
So this rotation, I would say, is, other than one kid I'm looking at, he got in for, I think, like the last couple minutes since we were up 10. But about 10, 11 of them, I would say, are on the average rotation. And sometimes it can be an issue, because say you have, one of your starters, one of your bench players playing really, really well. Like we mentioned, the kid had 20 points. One of your bench players playing really well. Well, now you got a starter on the bench, and you got to try and rotate them in. And sometimes it can be tricky. Now, we had 2 centers and 2 post players, and sometimes we would like to play a little small ball. And our 2 centers would sometimes get in foul trouble very quickly. So that made it a little easier for us to rotate the centers. Typically, to answer your question, I would say we kind of have things a little more pre-planned, give people maybe 2.5 minutes, and then get a sub in for them. And then once they catch their breath back, send them back in every 2.5 minutes, just to kind of keep the rotation going, and just to keep fresh bodies.
So would it be fair to say that you are trying to dictate who the other team puts on the floor by what you're putting on the floor, as opposed to responding to matchups that they put on the floor by matching it with guys that they're subbing?
I'd say, I mean, and like I mentioned, with the depth that we have and with the athleticism and the skill, the talent that we have, I'd say we want people to play to our abilities. I mean, and going into this game, they were 22 in the nation, but sometimes numbers are just numbers, and that doesn't really necessarily mean anything. So you go out there and you play your game. I mean, you could beat anybody. I said that.
You never know.
You never know.
Stranger things. Honestly, the interesting thing to me is on that sentence. I find it interesting a lot of the time, certain players just, it's like, well, should we even play the game anymore? Because you're already beaten in your mind, right? As opposed to like, everybody can compete. Everybody's got a chance type deal.
Well, and that's the thing is, going into this game, you could tell when they were going through layup lines, when they were walking in the gym, they all had that little swagger to them. Like, we're 22. You guys aren't going to do anything to us. And we wax them right off the floor. So sometimes that's to your advantage, being the underdog. Sometimes people come in and they're like, oh, well, this is going to be easy, and then you get and just hand it to them. As long as you're prepared, you go over everything that you got to go over and you're prepared going into the game. I mean, I'm never too worried.
I hear you. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, that's sort of the end of my my conversational piece. We'll get into some film with Coach Caputo. Looks like we're good. Give me 1 second to just get set up here. All right. And get my video panel going. All right. Sorry about the delay. Doug, you're good. You can see this, or do you need me to blow it up a little bit more?
We're all good.
I think we got one question. Hang on. Oh, no, it's just Tommy ducking out. Tommy, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Good to see you, sir. All right. So first one in the succession here is transition 3. It's by one of your guys. And I'm just wondering sort of what the shot selection, what the theory is on your team, all of that kind of stuff. Yay or nay?
Sometimes you'll have some interesting ones on here.
Yay or nay from you guys' standpoint?
I already know what this is. All right. So
obviously, without being married to the result, let me know what you guys think of that kind of stuff.
So, and that being said, that kid who shot it, he used to be able to he had a really great jump shot in high school.
Right.
I don't know who or where, when he started going away, they started turning into more of like a catapult. And I tried helping him with it, but it was his senior year by that time when I was working with him. And this was his senior year. He was our starting point guard. And the reason he was our starting point guard was because he was a very, very, very smart kid. He had a 4.0. So, I mean, he was one of those kids who he could control things on the floor. He was a phenomenal rebounder and defender. He was, I would easily argue, the best defender in the league. But offensively was not one of his strong suits, to be a little nice about it. But sometimes he would, and you knew, just looking at him, you knew sometimes he was going to pull one. He was going to take a shot that was ill-advised. And we let him hear about it. We definitely did, because we were not happy about that shot right there at all.
All right. So my question would then be, are you not happy about that shot for your team as a whole? Are you not happy about that shot for him specifically? Or are you not happy about that shot because of the result type deal? So like, what is sort of like the philosophy on your team?
I mean, hey, if it goes in, it goes in, and but you still got to, you'd be like, but I would still mention to him, like, even if it went in, that's an ill-advised shot, because one, like I said, he's not a 3-point shooter. I think he shot that just because he wanted to start getting his shots up, because he doesn't typically get his shots because he's the one who facilitates the offense. He's more of a true point guard, getting other people open, and he doesn't really get too many of his own looks. So every now and then he does put up a shot like that, and we would always harp on him like, you got to stop with those. But now if that was somebody else, I would say give it up, because if you even look right next to him, the kid at the top of the key, Lloyd, he's wide open. And I'd say Lloyd's a great shooter. He wasn't one of our percentage-wise best three-point shooters, but he was a great shooter. And I mean, I would say either pass that off or find a better shot, because sometimes first shot isn't the best shot.
Right. So philosophy-wise, it's fair to say then it's situation specific to the specific person you're saying.
And especially, I want to say, what does that say? That's first 10. Is that 14:50? I can't look at the clock. Yeah, it's 14:50.
No, honestly, your game clock bothered me a lot in this game, because like when you get a little bit farther on the court, as the camera pans, it goes blank and you can't see it and can't really see your shot clock. So I had real difficulty sometimes sort of figuring out time and score here.
So, and I'll give you a little rundown right now. That 22 standing in the corner, that's Isaac. That's the kid I was telling you who's just a freak athlete. And
right,
I mean, he's easily going to be the player of the year for us this year. And then number 10 is the player of the year last year. And then the kid getting the rebounds, our big boy. But yeah, I'd say, I mean, personally, that's early in the game, especially with a top ranked team like this, a very strong team. And it doesn't even matter the team, just in general. I would say that's not the best shot at all now.
All right. So we got a bunch of stuff about attacking their hedge. I think it's about 5 or 6 clips. I'll go one at a time. Is the playback speed okay for you? If you need me to rewind anything, just let me know. Basically, I'll go one at a time, and just pretty much want to hear what you see, if it worked for you, if it didn't work for you. Some of these clips are a little bit longer than others. They go like deeper into the possession type deal. So just kind of bear with it and let me know. So this one, we get a little bit deeper, obviously. We get second and third side. Ball gets loose a little bit. And then when we get into the screen and roll, they head you hard. Mm-hmm. And, he advances the ball. You get a 3 on the other side of the floor. Did you need that run back, or you get an idea?
No, I know. So that play specifically, what we started trying to do, is it the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just running again.
Yeah. So what we tried to start, and I don't know what kind of pass that was there. What we started to trying to do here was, as soon as that hard hedge comes, I shouldn't say here, what we started to change later on, as soon as that hard hedge comes, throw it to the corner and then give it to the big boy.
Right.
And the thing with him was, he would linger around too much and he wouldn't roll. And if you watch him here, I'm talking our big guy.
Yeah.
He'd start lingering around and he would slowly digress down to the rim. And we would tell him, as soon as you set that screen, get out of there. Okay. And then he gets down to the block. Now you got 3 guys down there, get it to the corner, throw it down low. And then especially, I don't know, our weak side guard shouldn't have been all the way on the block there. He should be more farther out and open up the paint. But if he was farther out, that paint would be wide open for him to go right down.
Right. So my question becomes, do you guys have specific packages for attacking specific coverages, or do you try to implement change in game as you like you said here, you advance the ball. I would call this a relay pass right here. This slot to slot pass, we would call that a relay up here. And later on, some of these other attacking the hedge, you do definitely hit the shake or the crackback, whatever you want to call it, the guy that fills in behind. So is it always just more so of an in-game adjustment for you, or do you guys have specific packages that you try to get your guys to play against all the time?
I would say specific game. We change up. I mean, we had the same plays all the time. This is one of our plays, and it's just a basic play. I mean, if you ever see the guys going like this, a head tap, that just means someone set a screen. Right. So, and I'm saying that because you could easily just see anytime somebody goes like this, and because what it would do is, especially this game specifically, we wanted our big coming out and setting the screens for them to hard hedge for this exact motion. And that's why this pass here, it wasn't again, we worked on preparing for this game to throw it to the corner and get it down low. Was
Okay.
for this game specifically what we would harp on the most.
And you mean
Now,
the corner in behind, right? The shake action?
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, right now, spacing wise, that was our biggest thing. And this was early in the season. Our spacing got better throughout the year, but that was the biggest thing we harped on is, I mean, he should be the guy, and he, the one with your mouse on it over there in the far corner.
Yeah.
He should have been another step or two down because I feel like he's too up, just a step, just a hair, so then he can get it and easily get it right down low, even if he has to take a dribble and get it down low. So it's quick. So it's a nice quick action.
Right. I'll get into, we got a couple other hedges here. You can see the shake is in the next two clips. I think this one is one more of an advance, but, just kind of like a 1-4 low set, a little bit of a bobble up top, and we get a second side out of it, and then we end up sprinting into the pick and roll in a second here. Here we go. So we're into it, and this is a reject against what was going to be a hedge. You can see that your big comes without his man. Their man's a little bit late. So my question was, when watching this, first question was, is your guard in the wrong spot? Do you typically keep two out, or do you want him occupying? And my second question was, do you teach the reject against it?
So our guard, yes. The one thing, and he gave us headaches. He did. And again, he's the player of the year, the kid who's coming in and in the wrong spot.
Right.
But he was shooting, I want to say 50% with like a game or two left in the season from free. And most of the shots he would shoot were like ignorant threes too. I mean, there was some, it's not like he was just shooting wide open. Like he was that good of a player. He was a fantastic player, but sometimes his spacing was just, it just left his mind sometimes. And you could see him start creeping in. He loved posting up, but when he was out, like he could, like I said, he could do it all. He could run the 3-point line. He could be out there, but he could also post up. So there would be times where he would just find himself loafing in because he wanted to post up because he wanted the ball. And we would always tell him, stay wide spacing. And as the season went on, it started getting better and it progressively, got better and better and better. But early in the season like this, our spacing was just, it gave headaches. I lost sleep over this sometimes.
I hear you. So what about the reject against the hedge? Was this one of the specific counters that you had prepared for the game? Or are you just teaching your guards, hey, when you can reject, like if they're allowing you to do it, do it?
It wasn't a specific thing we worked on. It was exactly like you said, if you can do it, do it. And Lloyd, the kid with the ball right now, he was one of the best at doing that because he was great with the ball in his hand. He was great, opening things up. So that was, I would say, giving him a lot of credit for that. He was very good at rejecting it and getting to the rim and just kind of being a playmaker. So that wasn't anything specifically we put in.
This is a heck of a finish. I'm just going to run it one more time. That's an unbelievable finish. We got one more attacking their hedge. I think this is one of the first ones where you see the ball go to the shake. It gets a little bit deeper in the action.
So that was the action I was telling you about right there, how we try to get Isaac going down, the little handoff from the point guard.
Right. So let me run that back for you here.
Yep. Now, what ideally, and again, we started getting better at this. It took a little time, but ideally what we wanted was the point guard.
Sorry, wrong clip. Here we go.
We wanted the point guard dribbling right at his man and kind of setting, not an illegal screen, but like handoff and kind of setting a little handoff screen.
Right. So if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of a dribble drive concept. A couple dribble drive guys on this call from Seattle and Peninsula. Just basically we would call this like a traffic screen up here where you don't really make contact, but you kind of get in the way. You sort of brush them a little bit as you go by and then come off their back and attack right away type deal, right?
And that being said, if you pause it right there, you have two people posting up on the block right now. That right there is what gave me nightmares because, like I said, our guard would always want to post up. He would love to post up, and we'd always tell him, get out. You're a great player. Play on the wing. And when we ran plays for him to post up, don't get me wrong, we weren't telling him not to. We ran plays for him to post up. But when you have a center that's that big of a force, you want to just let him run that paint himself, and then cut off of it and get out.
Right.
But that right there, I remember I put this on our film actually and started. Oh, I was not happy about that one. We got two guys posting up on the same block.
The exit cut, get out of there, give some space for sure. So here we get into it, and here's the hedge, and then you do actually, if I'm not mistaken, hit the shake.
Yep.
So I mean, this in the next clip, what are sort of your concepts for that shake man, that crackback man, that fill behind, whatever you want to call him? You mentioned this was one of your counters to it. Are you looking for him to attack? Are you looking for him to shoot? Are you looking for him to make the read? What, like, is he just playing against a long closeout? What's happening there?
I mean, if he could get that shot and we could let him shoot that 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, heck, I'm telling him to shoot that because, again, he's great. He's a phenomenal player. So I would let him shoot that all day. Now, if they start closing out on that, and especially if it's Isaac over there in the corner, the kid who shot it, if that's him over there, let him do his thing. But again, now you have two people in the paint posting up. And that was another concept that we would continuously do. Say he doesn't shoot that 3 and he gets it down into the paint to our big guy. If you watch our opposite,
it's a clip before. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
We're in here, and
yep, right here. So the reason he's cutting, number 10's cutting down that backside, he's going to get the offensive rebound. But if we were to throw it down to our big guy, we would always be sending that opposite guard, whoever's on that, like, right there, exactly. Whoever's right there, we'd send them. As soon as it gets into that paint to that big boy, we go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and that guy's going to be cutting right on that backside. We got so many looks out of that last year.
And is that just because you find that teams tend to double from the top help against you, and this is your counter? This is a post counter if you guys throw it in?
That, and I'd say, I'm not even so much they double with him. I'd say they just kind of turn their head.
Turn their head.
As soon as they, and that's what we teach them every time. As soon as they turn their head and start looking at the big boy, go. Like, we don't have it necessarily, don't sit there and wait 5 seconds. Don't sit there. Like, we'd say roughly 2 seconds would be the estimated. But as soon as that guy turns his head, starts looking at the big boy, go. And we got that look.
Sorry, Doug. It's remarkable to me how many times you can catch teams just on that turn of the head by teaching guys to watch the swivel. And it's all over the floor, right? Somebody sent me some action yesterday where it was like a blast from the corner, which was going to turn into a pistol. But instead of it turning into pistol, the guy who was blasting from the corner just face cut over top of his man who had fallen asleep. And they got it 3 times in the game. And I was like, wow, that's
just face cut him.
Yeah, just the guy's expecting one action to happen. He's playing it a certain way. He gets used to his habit, and you just attack him right away while he's not looking. This will be something very similar. This is, again, attacking the hedge and using the shake action. Again, it gets a little bit deeper into the clip. You send somebody through, you end up into the hedge action. And in the throw behind here, would you I think my question was basically, would you have preferred to punch the ball, or are you okay with the second side? So posting it up or getting to the second side and attacking.
So ideally, we were looking for that post up. And this is one of the things that we mentioned with our big boy right here. If you watch where he posts up, he's posting up like 2 feet underneath the block.
Yeah.
So, and I, trust me, that was one thing that we worked on. And again, progressively throughout the season, it got better. But if you notice where he's posting up, and we always tell him, if you get the ball 2 feet below the block, what are you going to do with it? You could be as big of a force. You could probably back people down. But with the size that he has, I mean, you post up right there, what are you going to do with the ball?
Right.
You're not going anywhere with it. You can, maybe open up, but it's we always preach to them 2 feet. And that's the one thing I huge on in the post is 2 feet above the block. 2 feet above the block every single time. When you're posting up, be 2 feet above the block, because if you get it and you got somebody hitting you from the back, you take that one dribble towards the rim, then you're right there. But if you are too low, then you find yourself underneath the backboard, and that's when you're throwing layups off the bottom of the backboard.
Right. What I found interesting about this is you almost get 2 hedges on the same play against you, right? They tried to hedge on the other side. Your man rejects, gives an up fake, plays off of 2, and ends up making a nice tough shot. So I'll move into some of the defending clips for you now, just before we move on a little bit here. So this is defending against their top ball screen in drop and over coverage. This is earlier in the game. Give me an idea of what you see, how happy or unhappy you are with it, if you would do anything different, and not being married to the result of the play, obviously.
Yeah, that's one of those where it's just kind of what we ideally were looking to do, and they didn't do it here. He picked and popped. But like I said, when that guy's setting the screen up there, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes they would send their 5 setting the screen, put their 4 in the dirt, and then the 4 would rise up. So what we initially started doing was telling our center, just stay in the paint, and let him roam up there and just switch it. So as soon as the 5 starts rolling, you just switch it, and the 4 pops, just switch it. I don't know if that makes sense because it's not here. Maybe you have it in here, but so here,
You're talking
I
about
thought
a
that was
roll replace action as opposed to a pop action, or am I misinterpreting you there?
no. So I was saying more of a roll, and then the 5 would pop up.
Okay.
So as soon as that 4 starts to roll and the 5 would pop up, they did it multiple times in the game, and that's what they're known for. And we would just tell our center, stay in the paint. Someone's going to come to you. They're not going to have both guys pop. So someone's going to come to you. And then, but this play right here, I thought that was great defense. He got both hands. He got a wide stance. He's up in their face. And they're quick players. They can all shoot. There was one thing defensively that we had to harp on big with these guys. And then we kind of got a dumb bounce there a couple times.
Well, close the possession off, you end up getting it and everything. I was more wondering when I was looking at this, if you guys play it any different in the center of the floor than you do, say, from the slots, say from the wing, etc., that kind of stuff. And excuse me, give me 1 second here.
Yeah, last year we did not really force one way or the other. We were kind of more open, like we're not forcing sidelines. We didn't do that last year. That's what you're asking, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. And sorry, let me just interrupt 1 second. BT, are you still in here? You asked me to play a clip again. Did I get that, or did I move on too quickly? I'm sorry.
That was the first one. I'm good.
All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
Doug, yeah, just going back to what you were saying. No difference in the center of the floor, basically.
Last year we did not.
Damn, DJ.
We played everything same way. Like I said, we were fighting through most things. Very, very strict to that. But this year we're actually going to be changing that up a little bit. We're forcing more everything sideline, baseline.
Okay.
So we are switching it up this year. But last year, no, we did not. And what you're going to be watching.
So we'll go one more. This is a drop and under. This is a sideline out of bounds clip. Still fairly early in the game. The screen itself happens sort of on the left slot. It's an inverse or a step up angled screen. And your big is still dropped below the free throw line. They end up for a pull up. Your man doesn't actually go over. He goes under and kind of gets buried on the roll.
Yep.
Just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on the clip.
So, and I remember this one. He definitely got yelled at a little bit for going under.
Right.
Because like I was mentioning, that's why our big guy didn't come out so quickly, because he's supposed to be going over that and forcing him into our big. Because again, you look at him, he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Right.
So like let them attack him. The chances, and that's why he typically got foul trouble sometimes. That was an issue, but we had a second big on the bench as well. So, but what happened here? He should have went over that, and then our big would just stick with 44. But I don't know why he thought we were switching it, and he plugged instead. I'm not sure what it thought, but there were also times where he.
So one of the questions I was going to ask is the going over versus the under, if it's personnel specific, but you kind of mentioned it in the talking part that we were talking about before. This is just basically an error, so to speak, by your ball handler's defender here, your man that's guarding the ball handler.
Yeah, it was.
It happens. Happens to the best of us. We got one more defending and drop. We're in the right slot. Their man rejects and ends up getting all the way to the basket. My question, I believe, was where do you guys help from, and how could you better defend this in your opinion?
Well, for starters, he didn't even. Can you go back to the beginning for me? He didn't even hit him into the screen. So, I mean, you can see he turns his head looking for the screen. He shouldn't be right there. He's turning and looking. He completely lost focus of the ball. He's not even in a stance. I mean, that's one reason. And love this kid, great kid. He would have times where he would get on defense. He would just kind of lapse and it just kind of space out. And you can see in the last couple of possessions. But if he would have just focused on the ball handler, let the screen come and then fight over it, and then let the big help for a split second. We did tell our bigs to help for a split second, but then get back as soon as possible. But our help side, you mentioned, where does the help come from? Our help comes from our opposite corner.
Okay, so you're low man. You're the most common guy is usually the guy who's lowest on the opposite side.
All the way over there, I have no clue. But again, I would say though,
So then this goes back to my question that I was asking in the beginning. There's two things that come to mind when I watch this. First, do you teach this person to be up and into the ball, or are you just teaching them to angle and kind of corral it into the screen? And then the second question is, your most important guy, your MIG, your low man, whatever you want to call it, do you always put him, say, all the way on the rim line or all the way on the lane line? Or do you have certain teams where what he's doing right now would be correct because, say, that's a really good shooter and you want to play the ball screen with two? Do you make those adjustments, or is it like one standard type of coverage for you guys?
So typically we tell him to get up in their face. So he should have been up. And again, like I said, defensively, the reason we always played Lloyd, the kid who was guarding the ball, who got beat, the reason we always played him was because he was like I said, he was great coming off of screens and going against screens and all of that. So offensive end, he was good. But the defensive end was always his lapse a little more. So he should have been up in him and not forcing him one way, but letting him go whichever way, and then whatever way he goes, playing off of it. You could, like I said, you could tell he just let him go right by. And then the help side on the other side, we were a little more hesitant than normal. And this is the only game I'll say that we did that with that weak side, because one, he was late. Number 5, he was extremely late. He should have been there for help. That should have been his. But all 5 of these guys on BW can shoot, and that is something we were taking into consideration. So it was one of those, it was kind of iffy, but he should have been there for help regardless.
Right. Okay, so we're at the hour mark. I asked you for an hour. Are you good on time? I'm going to skip ahead out of the defending with drop, and I'm going to go ahead to 2 other things, just finish up there. Are you good with the time on that, Doug?
Fine with me.
Awesome, sir. Let's go to the Gortats, and this is a bit of a long screen. And the reason I bring this up is because this is becoming kind of a popular type action. And I'm wondering if this is by design something that you teach, or if this is just a player being big in the post and doing what he's doing. So I'll give you an idea of what I mean if you're not familiar with the term, or if anybody who's listening is not familiar with the term. So this will be the 3rd time through it when I'm talking about it. But basically, we're walking the ball over half court, and we get a handoff to the wing and a reverse pass, and he attacks right off of the back of that player, sort of a dribble drive type concept, like we were mentioning before. But if everybody watches, as he gets downhill, as number 22 gets downhill here, your big underneath puts his back on his man and sort of traffic screens, posts up, ducks in, whatever you want to call it. But this is starting to become a Gortat or a Theiss screen. I've also heard it called a railroad screen. Is this a concept that you guys are teaching? And do you teach it with the pick and roll as well? Or is this just a player making kind of a heady play type deal?
Truthfully, that was just him making a heads up play.
Nice.
Now, that play that we ran right there, our big should have been on the opposite side. because that was a play. That was a design play, and I know it kind of got bobbled up top. But so excuse me. As I was mentioning before, we like to get 22 going downhill. So, obviously we ran a couple times. The point guard would hand it off and let 22 go downhill. Well,
Right.
Once you do that a couple times, this was our alter to it. So once we did that, now we wanted to get dumb him down a little bit, dribble to one side, let the defense move a little bit, let him shift, and then get him going downhill. Our big boy should have been on the opposite block. And then again, going back to our spacing, if you look on the opposite corner, he's starting to creep in already. So we basically have our whole paint. There's almost 3 defenders in the paint. So he should have been wider out, and our big should have been on the opposite side. It still worked out for us because he made a heads-up play and sealed him off. But that was our ideal and design play. Again, spacing.
You should implement it. I like this screen. I know the discussion that I've had with a few friends is the Celtics got called for it a few times the other night, but a lot of people don't realize that later on in the game they ended up just running the same screen again, and they ended up getting away with it again. And I think it's fantastic, and it's really tough to defend. I'm going to finish here. This is a set I like. I saw it 4 times in the game. So I'll actually run all 4 clips, and then I'm going to ask you to kind of tell me about it. It's a diamond set. It's sort of like a floppy concept as well. But basically it's, as I said, it's a diamond set into a cross screen into a lift on the other side. So let's take a look at it. There's 4 different results from the 4 different things here. So here's your cut to the right wing. Here's your cross screen, bringing your post in. And then there's the lift on the other side. We actually, unfortunately, end up turning it over on that one. But here we go again, diamond set. We go the other direction this time. Here's your cross screen, bringing him in. Here's your lift. You hit the ball with the lift, and then you play pass follow. He splits, makes a pretty big play. I think that's an and one that the ref missed, but who am I? Then here we go. Second last time, diamond set again, sort of the floppy kind of concept. Pass to the wing, cross screen, bringing him in. There's your lift for the jump shot up top. And I think the last one is actually a horn set that I like. So it's only the 3 of them that are the diamond set in there. Kind of walk me through this play. We see some options here, but what are the teaching points? What are you looking for? How does the spacing look in these 3? All of that kind of fun stuff.
All right, so stop me right there. So first thing we're looking for, there's 2 names for it: 2 down, 3 down. That's what it is: 2 down, 3 down.
Right.
Two down or 3 down. Excuse me. So 2 down would obviously be the 2 would be the one at the bottom of the diamond underneath the hoop. 3 down would be the 3 would be the 1. So it was just those 2 spots alter. So ideally, it doesn't. Well, the way we change it for 2 down or 3 down is just. It doesn't really change too much for the 2s and 3s. All it was going to change is who's coming off of the screen out of the bigs. Now Isaac right there, the big boy, number 22, who should be on the block posting up. That cross screen we set is an ideal look for him to come across, hands wide up. Right here. This cross screen is the first look we're looking for. And that's obvious. We have gotten that a couple times, but then what we primarily look for is if he goes and posts up, we're going to throw right into him because, again, he's a big boy and he could post up down there too.
On the cross screen, are you always trying to bring him on the top side? Are you always trying to bring him on the bottom side, or are you allowing him to read?
It's more of a read. We don't have a specific for that.
And then I'm sorry.
No, you're good. This was just a lapse on a pass. But if you go, there we go. So go to one that we actually get through.
So here's your cross screen, same idea.
Yeah, this would be our 3 down.
Yeah.
He would go high post right there. Okay. Another thing, again, he should be doing is posting up right there. Excuse me. And looking for a little high-low action. We don't get that as much, but because with our 4-man being who he is, there were times where we would get like a mismatch with him, and now the paint's completely wide open. We just throw a little lob up for him to go get it, because sometimes he'd get a smaller guy on him and just let him go to work. Right. But we don't do that as much. That's why we always preach to him, So look high, look for that lob high. If that's not open, you reverse it to the other side. And then off
When you
that
reverse to the
reversal,
other side, is it always pass and follow with the screen type deal? Is that what you're always playing
Yep.
into?
Yep, pass and follow with the screen, and then that 4 should be filling up. And I mean, that's just the basics right there. Now, number 5, he was very good at splitting screens. I got to say, I got to give him credit for that one. He was very, very good at splitting screens. That was probably his best, one of his best attributes for him.
Right.
So, I mean, him, especially this game, with the hard hedges that they gave, he was very crucial for us for some of those.
And then we got the last one, same idea. I think you get a little bit deeper in the set as well. Or actually, this is the jump shot one. So 2 down or 3 down, you still get your cross screen, bring your guy in, and he looks for his jump shot right away.
If we can get that look, I'll take that 9 times out of 10. I mean, because that right there is his shot. You know, a little spin, pull up. That's a great shot for him.
I got one more set. It's a horn set. I know I said I'd end on the diamond set. I like this one when I took a look at it. I think actually, I think I was just wondering what the teaching points were, because you end up sort of with the pin down there. You don't get what you want out of it, but I like the action on the back side here. So for anybody who's listening, we're in a horn set. We enter to the left forward, and then we pop the other forward and we reverse the ball twice. And then the gentleman who started on the one elbow gets a back screen and comes to the ball side block. And then the gentleman who was the first of the 2 reverses sets the pin down around the nail for the other wing. I don't know why he doesn't shoot this. He tries to dump it off and attack. But, kind of walk me through the options if you could here. Or is this called specifically for anyone? Are you trying to get deeper in it? Give me the coach's review, please.
Yeah, so this is just one of our plays where it is a very, I guess best way to put it, like a very loyal play for us. We run it a lot, and it's very good for us at times, and obviously it doesn't work every time, as you can see, but but it's a very good play for us. So once you get it here, big boy pops up. That clears out the paint right there, with your center, and we always put our center right there. Because, and I mean, there's times where we will switch these two in the position that they're in, but
right.
The reason we want our center, the one coming out, is because now it's going to open up our 4-man. And BW had a big 4-man. Typically in our conference, we don't have many 4 men that can guard number 10 right here, or again, number 22, Isaac. So that's why we like to get this action. And he should have set a little more angled of a screen to let him kind of come downhill. But we don't get that look right there. And then you have the post up once he gets down to the block is an option. And this down screen, that right there, this is exactly where we get a lot of our shots. This is why it was so good to us for the most part, is because that right there is, I mean, and again, he's a great shooter for us. He wasn't numbers wise one of our best shooters, but I feel like a lot of the time he didn't shoot. And as you can see right here, he didn't shoot as much as he should have.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think
I like all the options on it. Like this rip screen here, I feel like is probably open a lot. You probably get a lot of mismatch on that switch. And then I feel like this pin down is open a lot. And if he comes on the opposite side, like he does here on the weak side, I feel like you probably get your guard, if he doesn't shoot the ball, which he doesn't, engaging their big here, or the drop into the post a lot. I like the set. I'm probably going to steal that set. I'm just letting you know. But appreciate.
Well, I got a couple more plays. Honestly, I was waiting for there's 2 or 3 ones that we could talk about at some point. There's some. My coach, he's very good with the X's and O's. He has a lot of great plays, and the guy sitting next to me on the bench. So I'm the third guy in. The third guy sitting there is he played for West Virginia and got drafted to the Lakers. So he's very good. Dale Blaney. And this was years ago. I mean, he never played a full season, but he was he got drafted to the Lakers with Magic and Kareem. So he played with some great people, and he's great with the X's and O's. So we have some great sets that we do run.
Awesome. Well, I can see that. Obviously, you guys got the W in this game. I appreciate you taking the hour. Let me kind of wind this down here. So I like to end them all basically the same in saying, a huge shout out to all the coaches who take their time to jump on this call and listen. ask questions, shoot the breeze. I really appreciate you guys. As I've said numerous times, this show has really helped me stay involved with basketball. Obviously, we're not playing up here in Canada, so I appreciate guests such as yourself, Doug, taking time out of your week to spend an hour with us, letting us know what you guys do. And I appreciate all the coaches that jump on, as I said. And a huge thank you to the Rising Coaches Network, having connected me with so many coaches that are willing to share the game. Love it. Really, really appreciate you guys. Next week, so obviously this one is releasing on New Year's Day. So if you're tuning in, Happy New Year's to you. Hopefully 2021 is a far better year than 2020 has been so far. And lots of basketball to be played still. So looking forward to all of your stories and all that. We have Connor Haar joining us for the week after this one is released. So please tune in for that. I think that'll be a really special one. And just let me finish. Like, again, Doug, really appreciate the group you put together, all the weeks that we spent shooting the breeze, talking about basketball. I appreciate you, appreciate what you've done. I use the word appreciate a lot, but I mean, like, the amount of gratitude that I have for coaches such as yourself to take the time out and share the game it's endless. So love it. Thanks for spending an hour with us. Really appreciate you running it back.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to say, first off, to you as well, thank you very much. Always a pleasure talking with you on here, man. Like, it's always fun, being able to chit chat basketball. And then everybody else on here, thank you and appreciate you all for sitting in and listening to me talk. I know sometimes it could be a gift, but I'm actually, like we mentioned, me and Menelik are on, always on calls together, talking and whatnot. So I'm gonna put my number in the group if that's okay with you. I would say for anybody, if anybody ever has any questions or anything regarding the film or whatever, just want to even chit chat basketball or say hi. I'm very open to meeting and talking to new people. So if anybody needs anything, and then thank you very much, Menelik, for what you've done for me.
Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording here. Doug, if you want to hang out a little bit, sometimes coaches have questions afterwards that they don't want on film or whatever, but usually we shoot the breeze for a little bit and obviously way less formal. So thank you guys. Tune in to Run It Back next week, and Happy New Year to everybody.